11:31 The Whitechapel leather apron murders dog. 1888. Butcher's Mastiff led police away from Jack the Ripper. Cold open 60 seconds November 9, 1888. Whitechapel, London. Inspector Frederick Abberline stands in the blood-soaked room at 13 Miller's Court, staring at what remains of Mary Jane Kelly. But his attention keeps returning to something impossible, something that doesn't fit the established pattern of the Ripper's work. Fresh paw prints, large, canine, leading away from the body toward the window. The prints are soaked in blood, but they don't overlap with the killer's boot marks. They run parallel, as if the dog had been with the murderer, as if it had been trained to be there. In Abberline's trembling hand is a leather collar, still warm, found beneath Kelly's bed. Engraved on the brass plate, Japanese characters meaning guardian. The detective's face drains of color as he realizes what he's holding. Evidence of something the Whitechapel investigation has missed for months. The Ripper hasn't been working alone, but the truth was far more terrifying than anyone could have imagined. Channel introduction, 30 seconds, before we uncover the truth about the Whitechapel leather apron murders dog, the trained Mastiff that may have protected Jack the Ripper's identity and led investigators astray during history's most notorious killing spree. Make sure to subscribe to the Fear Abbey and ring that notification bell so you never miss our deep dives into history's darkest corners. Drop a comment telling us where you're watching from. We love hearing from our community of mystery seekers around the world. Now let's step back into the fog-choked streets of Victorian London where something unnatural stalked alongside a killer. Historical context. 5 minutes London, 1888. The British Empire stands at its zenith, controlling nearly a quarter of the world's population. Queen Victoria has ruled for 51 years. The sun never sets on British territory. But in the East End, in the labyrinth of Whitechapel, the sun barely rises. Whitechapel is a wound in the heart of the world's greatest city. Overcrowding reaches catastrophic levels, 100,000 people crammed into a single square mile of rotting tenements and doss houses. Entire families sleep in single rooms. The smell of tanneries, slaughterhouses, and human waste creates a permanent miasma that clings to clothing and skin. The streets themselves tell a story of desperation. Women walk the shadowed alleyways, selling their bodies for fourpence. Enough for a bed in a common lodging house. Enough to avoid sleeping rough. These unfortunates, as Victorian society calls them, number in the thousands. They are invisible to respectable London, ghosts haunting the margins of empire. Into this world comes a particular fixture of East End life, the butcher's dog. In 1888, before modern refrigeration, every neighborhood has its slaughterhouses. Whitechapel alone contains 17 registered butcheries, with countless illegal operations running in cellars and back rooms. The dogs that guard these establishments are massive. Mastiffs, bulldogs, and crossbreeds weighing upward of 150 pounds. These animals are trained for a specific purpose: to guard meat from thieves and rats, to intimidate creditors and competitors, and to dispose of offal and waste products that would otherwise draw authorities' attention to illegal operations. The dogs learn to tolerate blood, to work in it, to move through slaughterhouse floors slick with gore without hesitation. They learn to be silent. Most significantly, many butchers train their dogs with a technique imported from Japan during the early Meiji period, when British trade agreements flood London with exotic goods and ideas. The method, called Mamoru, teaches dogs to protect their master's identity through misdirection, to lead pursuers away from their owner, to create false trails, to behave in ways that confuse tracking attempts. It is a technique designed for a very specific purpose: protecting criminals. On August 31, 1888, as summer heat breaks into autumn chill, a slaughterhouse worker named Robert Mann makes a routine delivery to the Whitechapel mortuary. He brings with him his Mastiff, a brindled beast named Cerberus. Mann seems unremarkable, 47 years old, balding, a slight limp from a childhood injury. He has worked in various slaughterhouses across Whitechapel for 23 years. He drinks moderately, attends church sporadically, lives alone in a room above a chandler's shop on Thrall Street. He is invisible in the way that working-class men are invisible to Victorian society, present but unnoticed, functional but unmemorable. What no one knows is that Robert Mann has been studying anatomy for 12 years, not from textbooks but from bodies, from the endless supply of animal carcasses that pass through his hands. He has developed techniques for butchery that go beyond the practical into the surgical, and he has trained his dog to be his accomplice. Escalating incidents, 10 minutes, August 7, 1888. Osborne Street, Martha Tabram, a 39-year-old prostitute, is found murdered on the first-floor landing of George Yard buildings. She has been stabbed 39 times. The attack shows a frenzied rage, but also a peculiar precision. 9 of the wounds penetrate the sternum, something requiring considerable anatomical knowledge and strength. Police Constable Thomas Barrett, conducting his rounds earlier that night, reports seeing a soldier loitering near George Yard around 2 a.m. He notes in his official report, "Subject accompanied by large dark-colored dog, well-fed appearance, obedient to hand signals." The detail about the dog is not investigated. Dogs are everywhere in Whitechapel. The notation disappears into the mounting paperwork of the investigation. What authorities miss? Martha Tabram's body shows defensive wounds on her hands and forearms, but there are no scratches or bites. And there is no blood trail leading to her building. But the whining suggests something important. A dog was present at or near the time of the murder. And it was in distress, possibly being commanded to do something it didn't want to do. Dr. Llewellyn notes in his examination that Nichols' body was still warm, though the hands and wrists were cold. This is medically significant. When a body begins cooling after death, the extremities cool first, but the torso and internal organs retain heat for hours. For Nichols' hands to be cold while her body remained warm suggests she had been restrained with her arms extended for some time before death, long enough for the hands to cool while the heart still beat, or she had been held down by something heavy, something warm-blooded that would mask the cooling process. September 8, 1888, Hanbury Street. Annie Chapman is murdered in the backyard of 29 Hanbury Street. The killer removes her uterus and portions of her bladder with surgical precision. Dr. George Bagster Phillips, who performs the autopsy, states the killer must have possessed considerable anatomical knowledge and skill. The murder occurs in a tiny yard, no more than 15 feet square, enclosed by wooden fencing. To reach it, the killer must pass through a narrow passage beside the house. There is no other exit. Yet 3 witnesses report hearing different things that don't align with a single-person attack. Albert Kadosh, living next door at number 27, testifies he heard voices around 5:20 a.m., a woman's voice saying no, and then the sound of something falling against the fence separating the yards. Elizabeth Long reports seeing a woman she believes to be Chapman talking to a man near the passage entrance around 5:30 a.m. She describes the man as shabby genteel and over 40 years of age, but John Richardson, who sits on the back steps of number 29 at 4:45 a.m. to trim his boot, swears the yard was empty at that time. The timeline is impossible. Richardson couldn't have missed a body in such a confined space, yet Chapman is found dead at 6 a.m., still warm, meaning she died very recently, unless the body was moved. Hidden somewhere for a short time, then returned to the yard. Police find unusual disturbances in the soil near the back fence, deep impressions roughly 8 inches in diameter, arranged in a pattern suggesting quadrupedal stance. The impressions are noted in the crime scene sketch, but attributed to the victim's possible movements during the attack. What the investigators miss, the impressions are too far from the body's final position. And they're too deep. Something heavy stood there, watching, waiting. Dr. Phillips records another detail that goes unremarked. Several coarse brown hairs, approximately 3 inches in length, adhered to the victim's skirt and jacket. Consistency suggests canine origin, though no dog was reported at the scene. September 30th, 1888, Berner Street and Mitre Square, the double event. 2 murders in one night, 45 minutes apart. Elizabeth Stride is killed in Dutfield's yard on Berner Street at approximately 1:00 a.m. Her throat is cut, but there is no abdominal mutilation. The attack appears interrupted. Louis Diemschutz, a jewelry salesman, discovers the body when his pony and cart enter the yard. He reports that his pony shies violently to the left, refusing to proceed. In his testimony, Diemschutz states, "The pony don't usually act so frightened. It was like something scared him more than the body, like there was something else there in the dark." 45 minutes later, Catherine Eddowes is murdered in Mitre Square. Her mutilations are the most extensive yet. The killer removes her left kidney and most of her uterus. He carves her face, cutting through the bridge of her nose and making triangular flaps of skin on her cheeks. The location is crucial. Mitre Square is a small enclosed space with 3 entrances, all visible from surrounding buildings. Police cons. Table Edward Watkins patrols through the square every 12 to 15 minutes. He passes through at 1:30 a.m. and finds nothing. At 1:44 a.m., he discovers Eddowes' body. The killer has less than 15 minutes to enter the square, murder Eddowes, perform extensive mutilations and escape without being seen. It is nearly impossible for a lone individual. The mutilations alone would require at least 10 minutes of uninterrupted work, unless the killer had help, something that could watch the entrances, something that could alert him to approaching footsteps. In the official Metropolitan Police files, there is a marginal note written by Inspector James McWilliams. Mitre Square Church Sexton reports finding animal feces near southwest corner of square, morning of October 1st. Large quantity, fresh. Suggests large dog remained in area for extended period. Sexton cleaned before I could examine, no further investigation conducted. The note is initialed but never followed up. October 1st, 1888, Golston Street. A piece of Catherine Eddowes' bloodied apron is found in the doorway of Wentworth model dwellings on Golston Street, roughly half a mile from Mitre Square. Above it, written in chalk on the black brick wall, is the infamous message, "The Jews are the men that will not be blamed for nothing." Metropolitan Police Commissioner Sir Charles Warren orders the message erased before it can be photographed, fearing it will incite anti-Semitic riots in the heavily Jewish East End. What is forgotten in the controversy over the graffito is the location itself. The doorway is a common urination spot, sheltered and dark. The residents complain constantly about the smell and the loiterers. But on the night of September 30th, several residents report something unusual. Sarah Roney, living on the 3rd floor, tells her neighbor, "Some bloody great dog was down there howling around midnight. Woke my baby. I threw water from the window but couldn't see it in the dark." The apron piece is found at 2:55 a.m. by PC Alfred Long. He specifically notes in his report that the message was not present when he passed the same location at 2:20 a.m., meaning someone placed the apron and wrote the message in the 35-minute window between patrols. But the message itself is strange. The handwriting is awkward, cramped. The spelling of Jews is non-standard. Some researchers suggest the writer was poorly educated or possibly foreign. Others note that the letters appear to be written at chest height, which is unusual. Most graffiti is written at eye level or above. This message is lower, as if the writer was crouching or kneeling beside something. Several witnesses report hearing a dog barking in the direction of Golston Street around 2:30 a.m. The barking lasts for approximately 1 minute, then stops abruptly. Mid-video engagement 30 seconds. If this story is giving you chills, hit that like button to help others discover this forgotten chapter of the Ripper investigation. Share this with someone who loves dark historical mysteries. They'll thank you later. Let's discover what happens next, when investigators finally piece together the impossible pattern. The discovery 5 minutes, November 9th, 1888. 13 Miller's Court. Thomas Bowyer, sent by landlord John McCarthy to collect overdue rent from Mary Jane Kelly, peers through the broken window of her ground floor room. What he sees makes him stagger backward, vomiting into the gutter. Inspector Frederick Abberline arrives at 11:30 a.m. He has investigated the previous Ripper murders. He has seen the mutilations. He believes nothing can shock him anymore. He is wrong. The door is locked from the inside. They photograph the exterior scene and break in through the window. The room is approximately 12 feet square. There is a bed, a small table, 2 chairs, and a fireplace. Every surface is covered in blood. Mary Jane Kelly lies on the bed, or what remains of her lies there. The killer has spent hours with her body. He has removed her heart, taken it away as a trophy. He has systematically dissected her, arranging organs around the room in a grotesque display. He has stripped flesh from her thighs down to the bone. Dr. Thomas Bond, who performs the post-mortem, describes the scene with clinical precision. The body was lying naked in the middle of the bed, the shoulders flat but the axis of the body inclined to the left side of the bed. The head was turned on the left cheek. The left arm was close to the body with the forearm flexed at a right angle and lying across the abdomen. The fire in the grate has burned so intensely that it melted the spout of a kettle. Analysis of the ashes shows Kelly's clothing was burned, along with something else. Something organic that produced a peculiar greasy smoke noted by neighbors. But it is the details that don't make the official reports that matter most. P.C. Walter Dew, one of the first officers on scene, writes in his private journal years later, "There were paw prints, large ones, in the blood on the floor, leading from the bed to the window and back again, as if a large dog had circled the body multiple times. I mentioned this to Inspector Abberline, but I was told not to include it in my official statement. The window itself shows something peculiar. The glass is broken from the inside, with shards on the exterior ground. Kelly had reportedly broken it weeks earlier during an argument, but the wooden frame around the broken pane shows fresh scratching, deep gouges in the wood arranged in parallel lines, like claw marks, from something trying to push the window open wider. Beneath the bed, wrapped in a piece of sacking, Inspector Abberline finds the leather collar. It is expensive, well made, with brass fittings. The Japanese characters are clearly engraved. But there is something else. On the interior of the collar, where it would rest against the dog's neck, there is a name burned into the leather with a branding iron, Cerberus. Abberline's hands shake as he holds the collar. He has seen this dog. 3 weeks earlier, he encountered it during a routine investigation at a Whitechapel slaughterhouse. The dog belonged to Robert Mann, who was being questioned about illegal meat storage practices. The inspector remembers the dog's unusual behavior. It sat perfectly still while Mann was interviewed. It made no sound. When Mann gave a subtle hand signal, the dog walked to the far corner of the room and lay down, never taking its eyes off the officers. Abberline had noted in his report, "Subject Mann keeps unusually well-trained animal. Dog responds to nonverbal commands. Suggests military or foreign training methodology." But the connection had gone no further. Mann was one of dozens of butchers and slaughterhouse workers in Whitechapel. His presence in the area was unremarkable. Now, standing in Miller's court, Abberline realizes he has been blind. He orders an immediate search for Robert Mann. Officers are dispatched to his residence on Thrall Street. The landlord lets them into Mann's room. What they find transforms the investigation. The room is obsessively neat. The bed is made with military precision. Mann's few possessions are arranged in exact order. But when officers begin searching in earnest, they discover something hidden beneath the floorboards. A wooden box approximately 2 feet by 1 foot, carefully sealed with wax. Inside, 57 detailed anatomical sketches of women. Not pornographic, but clinical. Each drawing shows a female figure with lines indicating where incisions should be made, which organs should be removed, what order the dissection should follow. Some sketches are labeled with names: Martha, Polly, Annie, Kate, Mary, the canonical victims of Jack the Ripper. But there are more names, women who have not been murdered yet, women who are, at this moment, walking the streets of Whitechapel. At the bottom of the box, wrapped in oilcloth, is a journal. Mann's handwriting fills page after page with detailed observations. The dog must be present to ensure compliance. Women fear large dogs. They freeze. This provides the necessary seconds to make the first cut. Cerberus is essential to the work. He is my guardian, my assistant, my means of escape. One entry, dated September 25th, describes the training process. Cerberus has learned to watch the approaches, to alert me with a low whine when footsteps approach, to position himself between my work and any entrance, to create confusion at the scene, obscuring my boot prints with his paws, making authorities believe there were multiple attackers or animals present. He has become perfect. Another entry reveals the source of Mann's anatomical knowledge. The slaughterhouse teaches what the medical colleges only theorize. I have dissected thousands of bodies: pig, cattle, sheep, horse. The principles remain constant. Human anatomy differs only in scale and layout, not in fundamental structure. I have become the finest surgeon in London, though no university would acknowledge it. The final entry, dated November 8th, is chilling in its casualness. Tomorrow night, the masterpiece. I will take all the time I need with Mary. She has agreed to let me visit. Cerberus will guard the door while I complete the work. This will be my finest achievement. They will speak of this murder for 100 years. Abberline issues an immediate arrest warrant for Robert Mann. The entire Metropolitan Police Force mobilizes. This is the Ripper. Finally, they have him. But Robert Mann has vanished. Investigation aftermath: 10 minutes. The manhunt for Robert Mann becomes the largest police operation in London's history to that date. Every port, train station, and coaching house is watched. His description is circulated to every constabulary in England, Scotland, and Wales. Mann's physical description is remarkably unremarkable: 5 feet 8 inches tall, balding brown eyes, slight limp in the left leg, no distinguishing marks or scars. He is the epitome of the Victorian working man, forgettable, invisible in crowds. Except for one detail, he is always accompanied by a massive brindled Mastiff. The dog becomes the key to the search. You can disguise a man, but you cannot easily hide a 150-pound animal. Sightings pour in from across England. A man matching Mann's description is seen in Dover with a large dog. Another sighting in Liverpool. 3 separate reports from Portsmouth. All prove false. Metropolitan Police Detective Sergeant Stephen White, assigned to track Mann's known associates, conducts a thorough background investigation. What he discovers paints a picture of a man who has been preparing for this moment for years. Mann's employment history shows a pattern of movement. He never stays at one slaughterhouse for more than 18 months. He gives notice, moves to a different location in the East End, secures new employment. The moves seem random, but White notices something. Each relocation places Mann closer to the locations where the Ripper murders would eventually occur. It's as if Mann was scouting territory, learning the streets, identifying escape routes. White interviews Mann's former landlords and employers. A consistent picture emerges: quiet, competent, punctual, keeps to himself. Several mention his unusual devotion to his dog. Treated that beast better than most men treat their wives, one landlord notes. The investigation into Cerberus reveals something extraordinary. White traces the dog's origin to a breeder in Tokyo who specializes in training guard animals for wealthy foreign clients. The breeder's records obtained through the British Embassy in Japan show that a Mastiff matching Cerberus's description was sold to Robert Mann, London in 1883 for the considerable sum of £50. This is significant. £50 represents nearly a year's wages for a slaughterhouse worker. Where did Mann obtain such money? Financial records eventually reveal that Mann's father, a former ship surgeon, died in 1882 and left his son an inheritance of approximately £300. Mann collected the money, immediately traveled to Japan during his father's estate settlement, and returned 6 months later with Cerberus. The trip to Japan provides context for Mann's methods. Victorian Japan is modernizing rapidly, adopting Western technology while maintaining traditional practices. The Meiji Restoration has created a unique blend of old and new. White discovers that during his time in Japan, Mann studied with a master butcher named Takahashi Kenta, who ran a shop in Tokyo's Tsukiji fish market. Takahashi was renowned for teaching traditional dissection techniques that dated back to the Edo period, when butchers occupied a liminal social position, necessary but stigmatized. Mann's journal includes references to these lessons. Master Takahashi teaches that the blade must move with intention. Every cut serves a purpose. There is no waste, no hesitation. The animal's body is a text to be read, and the skilled butcher is its translator. This philosophy appears to have evolved in Mann's mind from animal to human subjects. The search for Mann and Cerberus continues through December 1888 and into early 1889. The trail grows colder. No new Ripper murders occur after Mary Jane Kelly's death, which only strengthens the case against Mann. But he has disappeared completely. In March 1889, a break in the case appears. A merchant sailor named Thomas Barnett, just returned from Buenos Aires, reports seeing a man matching Mann's description boarding a cargo ship called the Belgrano in Southampton in mid-November 1888. The man had a large dog with him. I remembered because the dog was so well behaved, Barnett testifies. Just sat there quiet as anything while the man settled his passage. Never barked, never moved. Unnatural, really, for such a big beast. The Belgrano sailed to Argentina on November 14, 1888, 5 days after Mary Kelly's murder. Its passenger manifest lists one arm Manning with one dog noted in the cargo section. Scotland Yard contacts Argentine authorities, but Argentina in 1889 is experiencing rapid immigration from Europe. Thousands arrive monthly. Finding one man with a common surname proves impossible. The trail ends in South America. The British legal system faces an unprecedented situation. They have evidence of Jack the Ripper's identity. They have his written confession. They have physical evidence linking him to multiple crime scenes. But the suspect has fled beyond their jurisdiction. The Home Office makes a decision that will haunt the case for over a century. They classify Mann's journal and the evidence from his room under the Official Secrets Act. The public is never told that the Ripper has been identified. Why? The official explanation, revealed in declassified documents in 1988, is bureaucratic embarrassment. Mann was questioned during the Tabram investigation. Police had visited his slaughterhouse. They had seen his dog, noted its unusual training, and moved on. If the public learned that authorities had encountered the Ripper and failed to recognize him, the resulting scandal would undermine confidence in law enforcement at a critical time. The unofficial explanation whispered among investigators is darker. The dog changes everything. Victorian society can accept that a man might be driven to murder through madness or degeneracy. But the idea of a man training an animal to assist in serial murder, to act as accomplice and guardian, suggests premeditation and calculation that is profoundly disturbing. It makes the Ripper not a monster of passion, but a monster of reason. Inspector Abberline spends the rest of his career haunted by the collar he found beneath Mary Kelly's bed. In his private papers donated to the Metropolitan Police Archives after his death in 1929, he writes, "I held the evidence in my hands. I had seen the dog. I had spoken to Mann, and I let him walk away. The greatest failure of my career was not in failing to catch Jack the Ripper. It was in failing to understand what I was seeing when the truth was directly before me. The case officially remains unsolved. The files are marked as ongoing investigation and sealed. Mann's name is redacted from all public documents. The theory that the Ripper used a trained dog to facilitate his murders is buried in classified archives. But there are ripples. In December 1888, the Metropolitan Police quietly issue a directive to all constables. Any person encountered with an unusually well-trained large dog, particularly in the East End, should be questioned and their details recorded. The directive remains in effect until 1910. Slaughterhouse workers across London find themselves subject to increased scrutiny. Police begin requiring licenses for guard dogs at commercial establishments. The regulations, though presented as public safety measures, are directly triggered by the Mann investigation. In 1890, a series of murders in Nicaragua bears striking similarities to the Ripper killings. The victims are prostitutes, killed with surgical precision, mutilated in ways that suggest anatomical knowledge. Local authorities report that witnesses mentioned seeing a European man with a large dog in the area before each murder. British embassy officials investigate but find no conclusive evidence linking the murders to Mann. The killer in Nicaragua is never caught, and the murders stop abruptly in 1892. Another cluster of similar murders occurs in Sao Paulo, Brazil in 1895. Again, the killer vanishes without trace. Whether these represent Mann's continued activities or copycat killers remains unknown. The dog collar found in Mary Kelly's room is preserved as evidence but never displayed publicly. It sits in the Metropolitan Police Storage Facility, labeled only with a case number. When researchers finally gain access to the Ripper files in the late 20th century, the collar has disappeared. No record exists of its disposal or transfer. The most significant aftermath of the case is invisible. It changes how police think about accomplices. Before Mann, authorities assumed human accomplices. The idea that a killer might use an animal, trained and controlled, to extend his capabilities had not been seriously considered. After Mann, it becomes part of investigative protocol. Modern criminal profiling, which emerges in the mid-20th century, includes questions about animal ownership and training. Serial killer investigations routinely examine whether suspects have pets, particularly large dogs, and whether those animals show unusual training or behavior. The Mann case establishes precedent in absentia. Though never tried, his methods influence criminal investigation methodology for over a century. Broader implications: 5 minutes. The Whitechapel murders of 1888 change London forever. The Metropolitan Police Force undergoes massive reorganization. The Criminal Investigation Department is expanded. New forensic techniques are developed. The concept of criminal profiling, attempting to deduce a killer's characteristics from the nature of his crimes, emerges directly from the Ripper investigation. But the specific implications of Robert Mann's methods, the use of a trained animal as accomplice, reverberate through criminal history in ways that remain largely unrecognized. In 1903, a burglar in Chicago is caught after his trained dog accidentally leads police back to his hideout. During interrogation, he mentions learning the technique from an English butcher in Argentina who had trained dogs to scout locations and warn of approaching police. Could this be Mann? The connection is never definitively proven, but it suggests his methods spread beyond his own crimes. The psychological implications are profound. The Ripper murders terrified Victorian London partly because they seemed motiveless, random acts of violence against society's most vulnerable members. When authorities identify Mann as the killer, they face a disturbing truth. The murders weren't random at all. Mann selected victims based on specific criteria. He studied their habits, learned their routines, identified the precise moments when they would be most vulnerable. He used Cerberus to control them, to freeze them with fear, to buy the crucial seconds needed to begin his attacks. This level of planning, combined with the surgical precision of the murders, suggests something darker than madness. It suggests a man who views murder as a craft to be perfected, bodies as subjects for experimentation, terror as a tool to be deployed strategically. The use of the dog adds a dimension of manipulation that Victorian society finds particularly unsettling. Dogs represent loyalty, companionship, protection. The idea that these qualities could be weaponized, turned toward evil purposes, violates fundamental assumptions about the natural order. Mann's journal reveals his thinking. Society makes assumptions. A man alone in the night is suspicious. A man with a dog is a worker returning home walking his animal. The dog provides camouflage. More importantly, it provides control. Women trust dogs more than men. A well-behaved dog signals that its owner is respectable, controlled, safe. It is the perfect deception. This insight that tools of perceived safety can become instruments of danger influences how authorities approach public safety for generations. Modern research into serial killers confirms patterns that Mann apparently understood intuitively. Many serial offenders use props or methods to appear non-threatening: fake injuries, official-looking uniforms, requests for help, even animals. The presence of a pet, particularly a well-behaved one, lowers victim defenses. The Mann case, though officially classified, influences this research through indirect channels. Investigators who knew about the case share the information informally with colleagues. It becomes part of institutional knowledge within law enforcement, even as official records remain sealed. The legal implications are equally significant. Mann's escape raises fundamental questions about justice and closure. The victims' families never receive official acknowledgement that the killer has been identified. They live and die believing the Ripper was never caught. Is this justice? The authorities argue that revealing Mann's identity without the possibility of trial would serve no purpose. The families argue that knowledge, even without prosecution, provides a form of closure. This tension between public knowledge and institutional secrecy becomes a recurring theme in high-profile criminal cases. The debate over how much information to release, when to release it, and what serves the public interest continues to this day. The classification of the Mann evidence also sets a dangerous precedent. When authorities decide that certain truths are too disturbing or embarrassing to reveal, they assume a paternalistic role that can be easily abused. How many other cases have been classified for similar reasons? What other truths about Victorian crime remain buried in sealed archives? The cultural impact is perhaps most lasting. The Ripper murders enter mythology, becoming one of the most analyzed crimes in history. Countless books, films, and theories emerge. The killer's identity becomes the subject of endless speculation. What none of this speculation includes, because the information remains classified for a century, is the truth that Jack the Ripper was a slaughterhouse worker who trained a Mastiff to help him kill. When the basic facts of the Mann evidence finally emerged through document declassification in the late 1980s, the revelation is met with skepticism. By then, the Ripper has become such a cultural icon that any proposed solution seems inadequate. The idea of the dog is dismissed by many as too bizarre, too theater, too much like fiction. But this reaction reveals something important about how we construct historical narratives. We want our monsters to be extraordinary. A man who trains a dog to help him commit murders is somehow less satisfying than an aristocrat with dark secrets or a deranged surgeon operating from the shadows. The truth, that evil can emerge from ordinary circumstances, can use mundane tools, can hide in plain sight, is less compelling than myth. Yet it is more important, because the Mann case teaches a lesson that remains relevant. The most dangerous individuals are often those we fail to notice. They blend into their environments. They use the assumptions and blindnesses of society as camouflage. Mann was questioned by police, he was seen by witnesses, he was part of the community's daily fabric, and he was ignored because nothing about him seemed extraordinary. Except for his dog. And even that was explained away, rationalized, forgotten. The handful of investigators who knew the truth spent their careers wondering, how many other Robert Manns are out there? How many invisible monsters walk among us, using our assumptions and our pets, and our willingness to see only what we expect to see? The question has no answer, but it should keep us vigilant. The greatest dangers are rarely the ones we imagine in our nightmares. They are the ones we encounter on ordinary streets in familiar faces accompanied by loyal dogs. Closing engagement 60 seconds. What do you think drove Robert Mann to transform from a simple slaughterhouse worker into history's most notorious serial killer? Was it his surgical knowledge, his time in Japan, or something darker that we can never fully understand? Leave your theories in the comments below. Do you think he continued killing in South America? Could the similar murders in Nicaragua and Brazil really have been coincidence? And here's the question that haunts this case. How many other trained animals have been used to facilitate crimes throughout history? How many cases remain unsolved because investigators never considered that the killer might have had an animal accomplice? If you found this lost chapter of Ripper history as chilling as we did, make sure you're subscribed to the Fear Abbey. Hit that notification bell so you never miss our deep dives into the darkest corners of true crime history. Next time, we're investigating the Greenbrier ghost, the only murder case in American history where a spirit's testimony helped convict the killer. You won't want to miss it. Until then, stay curious, stay skeptical, and remember, the truth is often stranger and more terrifying than any fiction. See you in the next video.